Anyone, Tyson, can you look at that list and tell me one team you think is going to win this week?
You're listening to the Fanalist Podcast. Follow on Twitter at TheFanalystPod.
Welcome to TFP Blitz, the first of many podcasts to come throughout this NFL season. I'm Andrew, and in studio with me is Tyson. If you're one of our longtime listeners, you've heard Tyson before. We took a bit of a hiatus this summer, but we are back. We'll be bringing you podcasts in all kinds of different sports. But week one, NFL, this is where we're starting. How are you doing, Tyson?
I'm doing fantastic.
Enjoy your summer, buddy?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm ready for this football season. The summer's over. Time for fall. That means football.
Yeah, like every Sunday, it's just kind of, it's tradition. Get up and watch football. And all summer, you kind of miss that. Once the Super Bowl's over, you miss that. And I've been filling it in with some rounds of golf. It's going to start to get a little bit colder here in Southern Ontario. And if golf's not going to be an option, then I want some football all day on Sunday.
And it's enough of the preseason. The preseason's fine, it gets you ready, but after like a week and a half, it's like
4 weeks of preseason just feels like such a long time. Because right when that first game comes out, the Hall of Fame game didn't even happen this year. That was a tragic mess.
That was terrible.
But you just get so stoked for football just because it's something, and then you start watching, and none of these guys are even going to play on the team, and it's just I almost boycott preseason now because I don't want to watch it and get the wrong perception of things. Because if a guy's playing good, what do you take out of preseason? If you see a player who's doing a really good job against, a bunch of fill-ins, do you really take that for much?
Not really. I'm getting excited just because I hear RG3's doing well in preseason, and
then you have to temper your expectations.
I have to remind myself it's preseason. No one really cares. And I completely forgot about that Hall of Fame game, how tragic of an incident that was.
Yeah, they painted the field wrong or something.
The players are on the side of the field, am I going to play or not? And the fans, they're all coming in. Oh, it was a mess.
It feels like one of those little tyke soccer games I played when I was 8 years old, and we weren't sure if the thunder or lightning was going to start, so we just kind of waited half an hour. And it was always disappointing then, and it was disappointing now. But once again, it was a preseason game, Hall of Fame game, meant nothing. Probably would have tuned out after the first quarter.
But at the same time, I don't think your Tyke League game had people from all over the country coming in.
Well, for me it did. For me it mattered.
Okay.
Anyways, let's get down to it. It's week one, and there's lots of news around the NFL, but let's just talk about the biggest things. Notable injuries. Tony Romo is going to be back. He has a back injury, and he'll be out until probably week 8. Did this have a big shift for you in your projections for the Dallas Cowboys this season?
I originally had them winning the division. Now I have them either making the playoffs with a wild card or barely missing. I have them floating around 500 now.
Yeah, Dallas was kind of the team that, everyone likes to give Tony Romo a lot of hate for being a bad quarterback because, a couple injuries here and there. There's some reasons. But, I think Tony Romo is a pretty good quarterback in the NFL. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. I'm not going to be the one to make that argument, but there's other people who really believe it. There's a lot of NFL writers who've written some pretty strong pieces about Tony Romo, and we can agree on this, he gets way too much flack.
Oh, for sure.
Considering how good he really is.
Well, when going back just a few years ago when he made it to, he nearly made it to the NFC Championship game, and if it wasn't for that non-catch, which we could argue forever, which we did.
Oh, and we will.
He arguably could have made it to the Super Bowl that year. That team was a legitimate contender, and you're right. He gets way too much flack, and that's just because he's on the Dallas Cowboys, and they're the most watched team in America. They're America's team.
Yeah, it's kind of every sport kind of has a team like that, right? In baseball, I think. I think the New York Yankees, as they've kind of struggled the last little while, they're kind of getting a bit of flack. And it helped that they had Alex Rodriguez for everyone to give a lot of crap to. In hockey, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just one of the teams you just love to hate. And yeah, Dallas gets a little bit too much of that. We saw last year when Romo was out, that team was a wreck. When he's in there, he's pretty valuable. So yeah, I had them winning the division as well. I've dropped them in my rankings. I now have another team in the division, which we'll get to shortly, taking that division. But Tony Romo, first, his impact over those 8 games probably cost them a few wins. We can agree on that.
Absolutely. And we don't even know how long it's going to be. We're thinking, he'll be back in 8 to 10 weeks or however long they said. But one little thing could happen and he could be out for the whole season.
It's his back.
And they don't want it to be re-injured. Think about how many times he's been injured throughout his career. They're going to make sure that this thing is good to go. Otherwise,
one setback could cost him the season. And if he comes back too early and gets knocked again, this guy is just, hey, being healthy is a bit of a skill, but he just has a fragile frame. And if he gets knocked pretty hard on his first game back, it would not surprise me to see him out again for the rest of the season.
I hate to be Nick and compare it to hockey, but like it reminds me of like Carey Price when last year he was like
absolutely
he was they got off to an amazing start, and then that one injury happens and they brought him back in way too early. He re-injures it and he's out for the season, and all of a sudden their team goes way down.
Yeah, like the risk reward in that. Like you got to make sure Tony Romo is solid when he comes back this year. You know, I'm almost throwing away this season if I'm the Cowboys. Let's make sure next year Ezekiel Elliott will have a year under his belt. That could be a big season for the Cowboys next season. We spent way too much time on Tony Romo's injury. We'll try and speed these up with the injuries, or we'll be here all weekend long. Teddy Bridgewater, out for the season. Minnesota Vikings decided that they really needed a quarterback. Moving to a new stadium, they want to keep the hype going, so they traded for Sam Bradford. So instead of talking too much about Teddy and Sam Bradford on their own, let's just talk about the shift in quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Does this really mean that much to you? Because, you know, in my mind, Teddy Bridgewater, he's not really a huge throwing quarterback. He does a lot of other things. He's pretty agile, can move around in the back, get out of the pocket if he needs to. Sam Bradford, I mean, I'm an Eagles fan, so seeing him get picked out of there for a first-round pick just felt like Christmas morning. So I'm totally fine with him leaving my Eagles. But, you know, I don't really see too many problems for the Vikings. They still have Adrian Peterson, who, even though the teams will stack the box against him, he'll be able to play around that.
Yeah, I did have them losing more games now that Bridgewater is out. I had them originally beating Carolina, and now I have them losing. And there are a few other games like that. I actually had them around 11-5, 10-6, 11-5, maybe even 12-4. But that might have been a little bit of a stretch. But I do think that he has a big impact on the team. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's very young, and we saw a bit of that last year, where they were able to make it to the playoffs. And if it wasn't for that missed field goal, for the love of Christ, that chip shot miss that got every...
What a different story it really would have been in the offseason for Minnesota. I mean, who knows? You could go on to that next game and win there, and then you're in a Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, against Carolina, maybe not, but at the same time, you don't know.
Yeah, right?
You don't know.
And we see that in the NFL all the time. You know, all it takes is one possession in the postseason, and it's a completely different story. We see it in all sports. We saw it in the NBA Finals. We saw it with Draymond Green being out a game, and then the Golden State falling apart. You could argue that that one thing, him trying to take a kick at somebody's family jewels, really cost Golden State a championship, right? Like, it's a discussion. It doesn't mean anything because it's already over. I kind of had some pretty low expectations for Minnesota this season. Anyways, AP's another year older. I don't really like too many of the other options on the team, so I was already kind of putting them pretty low, had them as, a borderline wildcard team. So I decided I wasn't actually going to change anything because I might have been a little under on them already. So with a bit of a drop, 8-8 is kind of my prediction for them. We're going to get to more predictions shortly. Jamal Charles, questionable for week 1 this week. Spencer Ware, likely to get a lot of catches. Maybe Charkandrick West is going to get some attention. You're a Jamal Charles owner in our fantasy league. He was your first pick. I mean, hey, it's just 1 week. You find another guy to fill in, but how disappointing is it when your week 1 guy cannot start for you?
It's incredibly disappointing. But at the same time, he's without question top 3 running backs in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, if he's not feeling good for week 1, wait for week 2. Hey, if he's not ready yet, wait for week 3. And then if he can stay healthy throughout the season, he could be a guy bringing you right to a football championship. He is one of those elite running backs in the league that, I mean, he's not underrated. He's not overrated. He's a good, solid guy that, as long as he can stay healthy.
He's the powerhouse for that offense.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
Alex Smith can't get away with his 15 yards, checkdowns, and all that stuff if he doesn't have Jamal Charles as a weapon there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's good enough for us for injuries. Talk about some suspensions. Tom Brady, 4 weeks. Garoppolo sitting in for the first 4 games. How do you see the Patriots after week 4?
I have them around 1-3, 2-2 maybe, but I most likely 1-3. I actually have them beating Houston. At the same time, I don't think it has that big of an impact, to be honest. When Tom Brady gets back in, he'll command the offense like he normally does, and with the addition of Martellus Bennett, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because if Gronk, that takes way less pressure for that tight end spot.
Yeah, if anything ever happened to Gronk,
which it happens,
significantly less worried.
He's got a lot of miles on him for a very young tight end. So.
And he's been partying all summer. He's been having a lot of fun. Apparently, he even hurt himself at one of his many fun stops over the summer. But he's okay. Should be ready for week 1. That's all that matters. I don't think he played any preseason time. Which, Bill Belichick, you're a genius. I love that. Don't play your starters in the preseason, because really that's the only reason I ever watch preseason, is to see, hey, I want to draft Julio Jones number 2 overall, so I'm going to watch him in the preseason and make sure he's not hurt. That's really the only reason I would watch the Atlanta Falcons, maybe even during the regular season, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's like the Greg Popovich of football, where he could care less about fans that go out there and want to see the star players. He's like, you know what? I've got a club to run, and if this means that they're going to be better in the regular season, so be it. You're going to miss out on seeing
all the
Gronk
plus EV situations all the time for Bill Belichick, that's for sure. I agree with you. I kind of have the Patriots 1-3, but this division's belonged to them for a very long time, and I don't really see a threat within that division that could, take over in the disappearance of them. They could be 1-3 after 3 games and still be, or after the 4 games and still be tied for the division lead.
0-4 would be tough, but at the same time, I mean,
still, then Tom Brady 12 games. You see them winning, 8 or 9 of those minimum. And I don't know if I see anyone else in the division getting 8 wins. So, I certainly, we're going to get to the division stuff. So we'll talk about the Patriots a little bit more then. Le'Veon Bell suspended for 3 weeks. This one I'm just going to touch on very quickly. Le'Veon Bell, just get your act together. Stop being suspended at the beginning of seasons. Right now with Ben Roethlisberger getting just another year older, you have Antonio Brown, you have yourself. Of course, D'Angelo Williams, he can fit in pretty well. I don't think Pittsburgh even skips a beat with him out for 3 weeks. And I that's a wash to me, man. Well,
D'Angelo Williams last year, he was able to take over that role perfectly. And I thought that was going to be a huge hit to their offense, but it turned out that pretty much any solid running back can take over that role well because of the offensive line. I mean, their offensive line is spectacular, and the way Tomlin runs that offense, phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely, a different reason Jamal Charles injured week 1. If we look at running backs for week 1 in weekly fantasy on DraftKings, somewhere I play a lot, for Jamal Charles, a guy like Spencer Ware could just come in and pick up and do exactly what Jamal Charles would have done. He could be a great play. And, behind Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams, people are chatting about him. He could be a top running back play as well this season. Josh Gordon, he is out 4 weeks for the Cleveland Browns. And, it's the Cleveland Browns. I don't even really know why I included Josh Gordon, but I feel like with RG3 looking all right, he looked all right. A guy like Josh Gordon, when he gets added back to this offense, it could be pretty entertaining to see. I'm pretty down on Cleveland's season overall, but hey, if they're going to prove me wrong, it's going to be because Josh Gordon has a pretty solid piece in that offense.
What a storyline that would be too, eh? Josh Gordon coming back and then RG3, the return of him.
You imagine those two combining for 12 touchdowns over the season?
Yeah,
that'd be
crazy.
Incredible.
I wish
it's possible.
Yeah, I wish they kept Benjamin, but
yeah, there's some other guys deep in the depth chart there as well. I like a guy like Terrell Pryor, talking fantasy. He's only $3,000 on DraftKings this week. There's a little sleeper pick for any of our fantasy listeners, and a few other guys as well. Cleveland, the problem is your horrible defense. You might be able to put up 20 points every week, but you're probably going to allow 40. So that's the problem. And, that kind of does it for our news and notes. Something that people may not be aware of that's new for this season, so we'll let you know about it, is the new kickoff rule. They're kicking from the exact same spot. This has nothing to do with field goals. It's just the punts and after touchdown stuff. Instead of the touchback rule, actually, this would not be for punts after touchdowns. I don't believe. We'll have to check that. But the touchback rule, where you have to come out to the 20-yard line if you touch back in the end zone, that has been pushed out to the 25-yard line. Hopefully going to encourage kickers to, try and kick it a little bit higher, drop it in the, those between the 0 and the 10, and get players a little bit deeper. Hopefully it will translate to a few more of those nice long runs that we've come to love. Nothing better than watching Red Zone, even on week 1 of football, and the very first play of the season is somebody running back a 100-yard touchdown. It's probably one of my favorite highlights in football, I think. I think Hail Marys are great, and I think returning a punt just can really throw a defense on their heels, especially if you're the road team and you get that in someone's stadium. That's huge, man.
Well, when the Eagles added Sproles, immediately he was returning all these incredible punts. And
especially
kicks.
Always primetime Sproles. If it's a primetime game, Sproles just lights it up no matter what.
And Devin Hester, too. It was getting to a point where
Hester, worth mentioning, there is rumors today. Nothing's confirmed that I've seen as of now that he's going to be joining the Baltimore Ravens. So keep your eye on that.
Well,
Should be an interesting guy, but probably won't have much fantasy value. He'll just be returning punts and hanging around.
Won't be that much of an impact, but it's a good addition.
If you're going to make a rule change that's going to make it easier to return punts, why not add one of the best guys who's ever done it?
Yeah, and like I was saying, it was getting to a point where you're just watching guys kicking over the end zone all the time, and it was touchback after touchback.
It was horrible.
Pointless.
We have way too many stoppages already in football, and I mean, you still stop when you run it back, but just taking the kneel is so boring. It's not good for TV. The NFL, stop trying to make things boring, make them entertaining, figure out what a pass reception really is and what interference is. They got way too many discrepancies within the rules in the NFL.
And it was getting to a point where they were almost going to change it to like, all right, we'll just start on the 20. And it's like, are you kidding me? That changes the whole game.
Yeah.
No onside kicks, no...
It takes a player completely out of the league.
Yeah,
for one, all these college kids that had dreams of being a kicker, I mean, it's a pretty poor dream to have. But hey,
if it gets you $1 million, who cares?
To each their own. Hey, yeah, and I'd rather be out there kicking field goals, making them, than sitting here talking to you, even though you're some pretty good company. Let's jump into our divisions. We were talking a bit about the New England Patriots, AFC East. We both agree. We both have the Patriots pretty high. You have them at 12-4 for the season. I have them at 10-6. Both of us are over the expectation by Vegas. It looks like the public's betting on the over 10.5. So definitely nothing that I'm rushing to the window to bet. But New England Patriots, we can both agree, division leaders, division winners.
Absolutely. I mean, the East is just not that strong at the end of the day. Tyrod Taylor, he's a good quarterback, but I think the Bills in general they're disappointing. I mean, when you consider the fact that there was so much hype around Rex Ryan coming in and LaShawn McCoy, adding him to the lineup, I think a lot of people were expecting the Bills to maybe be a wild card team, because there's no way people are dismissing the Patriots.
Yeah, but here's the thing. By no way am I the Patriots are, my team to make it to the AFC Championship, okay? So I certainly think they're going to do that. But if you start 0-4, Brady comes back, and hey, it's the NFL. Brady gets injured. Something happens to Gronk, and Bennett doesn't fill into the position. He can't take over as well. If something happens to the Patriots for the first time in what seems like a millennium, who's the team in the East that you think can be a threat for the division lead?
I think it's the Jets.
I would agree. Perfect.
But
I thought you were going to say Buffalo after you were saying, people were talking about them as a wild card, and I was thinking...
I still have Buffalo being a 500 team, but if there's a team that can rise to the occasion, I feel like it's the Jets. I feel like they can come back and take over the division that gets deflated with Brady getting injured. But I'm definitely not sleeping on Buffalo. They definitely can rise to the occasion and get a division victory, but I like the Jets more.
We can agree it won't be the Dolphins.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. That's all that matters. We both have them pretty low. We have them. Both of us have them at 5-11 for the season. The Vegas over/under is being bet down to the under 7. So certainly something we would take a look at. That's the way the AFC East goes. AFC North, it's the Pittsburgh and Cincinnati show. Cleveland. Sure, RG3, you looked great. Maybe you'll throw a couple touchdowns this season. Maybe you'll be able to hold your job for, more than 8 weeks. Good luck to you. You're not winning this division, and I see you nodding your head, so we'll agree with that. Baltimore Ravens, hey, Joe Flacco, you're not elite. That's just the way it is. You don't quite have the weapons. You got a committee at running back and some pretty old targets out in the some wideouts. Just don't really see them doing much. But between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, who's your team? Who takes the division? I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I have it very close, very, very close. I have the Bengals 11-5. I also have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 11-5. But I have Cincinnati ended up winning the division.
You're right. 2 teams at 11-5. That is very close.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the closest get. And I think they'll split the regular season series that they have. But, I mean, it'll come down to how they play in their own conference. And I think Cincinnati will edge them out. But that being said, I would not be surprised at all if Pittsburgh's able to maybe squeeze out another win.
Absolutely.
12-4. I really like Pittsburgh this season.
Yeah, neither of them will be a surprise to me. If I had to pick one, gun to my head, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. Hey, they're plus 190 to win the division. Pittsburgh's plus 120, so I would rather take the underdog there in that position between the two of them. AFC South, Tennessee Titans, Jacksonville Jaguars, Houston Texans. Stop me when you see a division leader. Indianapolis Colts.
There you go.
There it is. I have them at 11-5. You have them at 12-4. And Vegas only has them as, they're getting bet to the over 9.5. So we're pretty high on them in comparison to the other teams. Do you think Andrew Luck can figure things out this year? And with T.Y. Hilton, and Dante Moncrief, and Kobe Fleener's leaving. That's a problem at tight end, but he's still got enough guys out there that if Andrew Luck can be the guy that all the hypes led him up to be, maybe this could be an MVP season for Andrew Luck if he can make the comeback.
Might be a little bit of a stretch, but I feel a lot of people are writing him off after last year's injury problems.
People are either very high or very low. It's hard to find someone with the Colts at 9-7.
I used to be really low on Luck. I just felt like the reason why the Colts would do well every year is because they're in a division where teams struggle to get like 6 wins,
Yeah.
And I think people are way too high on Houston this year, having them in like the top 15 in their
Well, the
power
division
rankings.
has improved. The problem with Houston
and I like the addition of Lamar Miller, but where's the
and
quarterback?
Brock Osweiler, which is debatable what he can do.
I think it's really debatable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think around the division has improved slightly. Jacksonville, I think, is going to be. You don't think so? I think Jacksonville's going to be better this season. I admit this might be one of our biggest discrepancies on the board. I have Jacksonville 8-8. You have them at 4-12. I think Blake Bortles has quite a few solid receivers there that they should be able to figure things out with and not compete for the division. But, maybe they could sneak into a wild card spot if somebody else tails off.
And I would love to see that. I would love to see a little shakeup in the AFC because it seems like it's the same 6 teams that make it to the playoffs every season.
Absolutely.
Maybe like a difference in wild card teams, but like really, Patriots taking it. Denver's always in the conversation. Indianapolis, if they don't win the division, it's because Andrew Luck's injured.
Absolutely. Whenever we look at when we looked over these standings, we're choosing the exact same teams to win the division, and that's why we're trying to talk about some of the other guys in the division as well who could be a surprise. But the problem is history's dictated that a lot of these guys repeat as the division champions, and it's kind of hard to pick a team to go from 4-12 to 12-4 season after season, especially in the AFC and the AFC in general. AFC West. Denver are defending Super Bowl champions. Not often that any of the quarterbacks that you had the previous season are out of the city the next year. And Trevor Siemian is going to be your week 1 starter. Good luck with that. I don't know how I have them at 9-7. It's the defense, really. You have them at 11-5. Do you think Kansas City can... No, you don't think Kansas City can compete for that spot, or is it going to be kind of close?
I think that it'll be very close. I have Kansas City 10-6, floating around that, maybe 11-5, and then Denver Broncos, I have them at 11-5 as well, maybe 10-6. But I like the defense so much that they take over that number 1 spot. But KC definitely has a chance. It's not like it's a clear winner and loser in that division.
I'm pretty high on the Chiefs. I think it's really important to have a quarterback that is going to be doing things. And Alex Smith, he's nothing special, but you know what you're going to get from him, and you can game plan around that. With Denver, there's just a big question at quarterback. Trevor Siemian, he might not last very long. Mark Sanchez, are you going to trade him or are you going to stick with him? He's a guy where everyone's always hating on Mark Sanchez, and I try and look at it the positive way. But what it comes down to is if you throw an interception for every touchdown, it's going to be hard to be successful in the NFL, and that defense can only do so much for you.
Yeah, absolutely. A dark horse to take out of this division is the Oakland Raiders, and they're pretty much a dark horse every season.
For me, my dark horse would be the Chargers. So maybe this is this is an interesting division. We kind of have some different takes on these guys. But what's your big thing with the Raiders?
Derek Carr is quarterback. I like him.
Absolutely.
I like what they've done to the offense. Their defense is always solid every year. I feel like it's their time to take over and maybe become a threat to the big guys like Denver and Kansas City. But
wouldn't that be something? Watch them win the division, and then they pick up the team and bring them to Las Vegas the next season. There'd be a ton of hype around that, but there'd be a lot of upset people in the Golden State, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But, if I'm going to pick one team in the AFC, it's the Raiders to come out of. Me having them as a team to miss the playoffs, I think they have the best chance of making it. Baltimore as well. And then, of course, Houston, just because there is a lot of good things to be said about Houston. But I really like the Oakland Raiders in this division being a possible threat.
Awesome. So our 2 teams that we see going to the championship from the AFC are New England and Cincinnati. And in just a moment, we'll let you know who we think will be joining one of those 2 teams in the Super Bowl from the NFC. Let's head on over to the NFC East. Lots of stuff there. Tony Romo, who's going to be out. Philadelphia, just trading Sam Bradford. I haven't adjusted my rankings on our sheets yet. With Bradford being out, I think it will cost Philadelphia maybe a win or two this season. Probably those are going to go within the division. Will help Dallas out, will help Washington out. And the Giants are kind of the team I flipped to now that Dallas kind of looks pretty unstable to me. You do have the Giants atop, as I do. They are given a 8 over-under on Bodog. That's the site we've been looking at for these team totals, and that's being bet to the over. That's over 8. We have them at 11-5. What is it about the Giants you really like?
Well, first of all, it's the injury to Tony Romo is definitely a helping.
It's all about the division to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the offense it speaks for itself. I mean Odell Beckham, that's huge, and I think Eli. It's tough to go all in on.
Is there a goofier looking dude in sports who's as good as Eli Manning? That guy just looks goofy, man, all the time. You see the video, the photos of him when Peyton won the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
The whole family's losing their mind, and,
he's got that serious look on his face.
He's looking at a fishbowl.
Yeah.
I can't believe it, man. But I think Eli Manning, another
guy. He
guy.
throws way too many interceptions for me to get on board with him in the offense.
But I think he's one of those, he has 2 Super Bowls that, probably shouldn't have.
Oh, yeah. One year he does well, and then the next year he barely gets to 7 or 6 wins. It's crazy.
See, Eli Manning's kind of my dark horse this season, and this isn't fandom at all. Nobody, please, do not call me out on this. I am an Eagles fan, okay? The fact that I've had to go from Dallas to the Giants after watching Washington win last season is punishment enough. But, Eli Manning could be a really big... he's a sleeper for me for an MVP. Yeah. If he has the season, hey man, Odell Beckham Jr., I was happy to draft him in most of my fantasy leagues. This guy, he has the upside of a 20 touchdown season. Wide receivers, they don't win any awards in the NFL. They don't win the MVP. But if you're going to talk about the best wide receiver at the end of the season, OBJ is in the discussion. And hey, if you're going to get 20 touchdowns, it's the guy who throws them to you that's going to get credit for that.
Yep.
So I got the Giants now that Dallas has that injury to Romo. We'll see how things go. Washington, can they repeat their performance last season?
I have them 500, so pretty much, yeah.
Which was really enough to win the division last season, absolutely. Yeah. I have them 6-10. I've heard some takes. I know somebody who thinks that Kirk Cousins is going to have the most passing yards this season. Good luck. Okay?
Yeah, good luck. Very good luck.
And Philadelphia Eagles, they're a train wreck. They're going to figure things out now with Chase Daniel. Minimum price on DraftKings if you're looking for a steal there. Actually, 2 guys within this division who are going to be pretty all right. I'm going to have them in my cash games. I think for week 1 of the NFL, I'm definitely going to be having some Dak Prescott mixed in there. We didn't even mention really Dak Prescott when we talked about Dallas. He's looked great in the preseason. It's the preseason.
Yeah, it's preseason.
So we'll see how the regular season goes. Can't give you much credit right now, buddy. But hey, nothing wrong with the NFC East. That's one of the most publicized divisions in football. So hopefully there's some teams in there that can make some noise and keep it interesting going down to the final weeks. NFC North, Green Bay Packers on top. Give me a head nod.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much there that needs to be said. We know what the Packers are. There's been no big changes. We just need Jordy Nelson to stay healthy. Aaron Rodgers, he's my MVP pick for the season.
Yep, mine too.
He's our Super Bowl pick for the season as well. We both have Green Bay being our Super Bowl team. Within that division, Minnesota Vikings, we've talked about the injury to Teddy Bridgewater, so we have them kind of dropping off a bit. I think I still see Minnesota maybe squeezing into that wild card spot. But this is like the only thing that we have different within our playoff picture. You have the Chicago Bears, and unlike me, being completely unbiased, giving a lot of credit to NFC East teams, being an Eagles fan, Who's your favorite team, Tyson? Who are you watching on Sunday?
Chicago.
Oh, okay. And who do you have getting a wild card in the NFC?
Chicago.
Yeah, so I'll give you a second to back that one up. Do you think Smokin' Jay Cutler is going to have a good season?
I think people, we talk about people getting too high on, hating Tony Romo.
Yeah.
I think the same can be said about Jay Cutler, but for good reason. He has had shaky games.
For him, is it attitude, though? Because when you see him,
what I was about to say.
Yeah, when you see him after a tough loss, he's just like, we'll try better next week.
Yeah, well, he throws a terrible interception. He's on the sidelines. Looks like he just could not give half a shit.
Yeah.
And that definitely pisses a lot of Bears fans off, like myself. But at the same time, I mean, he's not that bad. Granted, he's had the help of Brandon Marshall over the years, Matt Forte. He loses both of those guys to the Jets.
Alshon Jeffrey and Jeremy Langford are going to be the heart of this team.
Kevin White.
Yeah, and Kevin White. So it's really going to come down to those guys, how they can do within that division, man. I just don't see it.
I think with the injury of with Teddy Bridgewater, and I don't think Bradford will have that much of an impact at all. Maybe win them a game or two more. I don't think it's that crazy to assume Chicago can maybe get to 10-6.
Okay. Wow. 10-6 for the Chicago Bears,
and that'd be huge.
I'm gonna take a piece of paper and write 10-6 Bears and make that maybe the make that the avatar or the picture for this podcast. 10-6 for the Bears.
How huge would that be, though, coming off of the last few seasons where it's been an absolute train wreck for the Bears?
Yeah, sure. It'd be great if the Miami Dolphins went 16-0 as well this season. Wouldn't it? All right, on to the NFC South. Sorry, Tice. On to the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers, disappointing finish in the Super Bowl, and historically teams that lose in the Super Bowl don't fare too well the next season. And Vegas kind of agrees with that. They have the over-under set at 10.5. And people are betting it over, okay? I mean, they won 15 games last season. I think it's pretty easy to go around a table and agree that that's not going to repeat. It's pretty hard to win 15 games in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah.
I have them dropping off to 11 wins, still above that 10.5 threshold, but you have them at 13-3. Is it
12-4 now.
12-4?
Yep.
Is it Cam Newton that you really believe is just, good enough to, no matter what receivers you throw out there, if Ted Ginn Jr. can get open 70 yards downfield, the Carolina Panthers have the defense to win the game?
Yeah, I mean, their defense is great, and it's a huge backbone for that team. And I think Cam Newton might get a little bit more hype than he should, but at the same time, he's a phenomenal quarterback. He's a young, very talented, hard to figure out quarterback that really turned a lot of heads after last season. Because, I mean, the Panthers, sure, they were able to squeeze into the playoffs the year before, but they were really a team that no one was really looking at as a threat.
We don't get many surprises. We were talking about this, especially with the AFC. We don't get many surprises in football. So when people were talking about Carolina, being a hinge team in the NFC South, we were still looking at teams like Atlanta as teams that could win the division last season, and a lot of people who were really jumping on the Cam Newton bandwagon at the start. I mean, it's not a bandwagon at that point when there's only 4 or 5 of you there. There were a lot of people who were really backing that up and getting some flack for it. And Cam Newton, your number one fantasy quarterback last season.
Yeah.
An incredible season by him. And, I mean, 15-1 is going to do that. You're going to have incredible stats, especially fantasy-wise, if you can pull off 15 wins. I still see them winning the division. Do you see a threat somewhere else?
Not really. New Orleans is aging with their quarterback, Drew Brees. And
he'll still throw the most passing yards this season.
Yeah.
I don't think aging. I know, he's obviously aging, right? So at some point he has to fall off. Or maybe he retires while he's still, playing well. Maybe he decides to go that route. But there's just nobody in this division that really...
the only team I can see maybe raising some eyebrows and possibly being a threat, and I have them actually 4th in the division, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, have potential to be...
They have the biggest range with Winston, don't they?
Yeah, and I just... There's something about the Buccaneers where I think if the right things go right and everything goes in the right direction, the Buccaneers could be the best team for a dark horse to choose from in the
Absolutely.
NFC.
I've been picking up Mike Evans in the second round of fantasy drafts this season, and I love getting a guy like him in the second round. He gets so many targets, and pretty good guy. He's had a lot of drops the last few seasons, so he gets knocked for that. But hey, if he can catch a few more passes, and Vincent Jackson can, not get a year older, then maybe Tampa Bay, if Mariota can take the step, maybe they could be something.
You mean Winston?
Yeah, sorry, Winston, of course.
I get the two mixed up all the time.
So we agree, Carolina for the NFC South. NFC West, we'll finish this up with the new Los Angeles Rams. I think they're going to be a dumpster fire. Hope you had a lot of fun being on HBO for the last month, because nobody else is going to be watching you for the next 16 games this season.
Good God.
San Francisco, Colin Kaepernick's going to be sitting on the bench. And Blaine Gabbert is going to be the number one quarterback in San Francisco under Chip Kelly. Good luck, San Francisco. Not much to even really talk about with those two. Maybe, actually, Los Angeles, because there's just so much hype around that team. The record that Vegas has them at, it's being bet to the under. It's 7.5.
That's crazy.
I just can't see 7 wins, man.
I've got 4.
Yeah, I have 3. I think that might be the best bet on the board if you wanted to hit on somebody's team total here. I mean, minus 200 is how much you have. Like, you've got to bet $200 to win 100 on that under 7.5. But I think that's pretty safe if you can parlay that up with another division winner, make it worthwhile. Maybe do it with the New York Giants. I'm pretty high on them. And this division, it's all about the Seahawks
Yeah,
and the Cardinals.
And the Cardinals, and that's the way it's going to be for the next couple of seasons, I think, and that's the way it's been for the last 2 seasons as well. And the only reason why the Cardinals weren't relevant, or they were relevant for sure, but they weren't able to make the playoffs.
We've been waiting for the breakout, and they did it last year.
Yeah, with Carson Palmer, and that was the main thing.
Can
He gets
Carson
injured,
Palmer repeat?
It's over. But yeah, and I really like them. I have them 13-3. I also have the Seahawks 13-3 as well. It's crazy, 3 teams in this conference having a 13-3 record. But
did you drop Green Bay to 12? Because then you have 4 teams at 13-3.
No, because I dropped Carolina to 12.
Right, absolutely. Okay, you dropped Carolina. Yeah. Okay, I was going to say you got 4 teams at 13-3. That is a pretty bold statement.
But when you look at how strong the Seahawks are, I mean, their defense is among, in my opinion, the last 4 seasons, maybe one of the best defensive teams in that stretch of time ever.
Absolutely. To be able to do it year after year like that, it's pretty fantastic. Yeah, and, Russell Wilson last season finished on an incredible stretch that I feel like people aren't really talking about. People Wilson's too short to be a quarterback. He's too this, he's too that. He's won a Super Bowl already.
Yeah.
He could have won 2 in a row if it wasn't for one mistake. Seahawks, not that they're underrated by any means. Seahawks fans are very loud with their love for the team, and enough people did jump on that bandwagon a few seasons ago. I do have them winning the division as well.
I have the Cardinals winning the division, but I mean the same record.
By a tiebreaker.
Things can happen where the Cardinals lose a ridiculous game, or the Seahawks do, where they should have won. That happens all the time, so it isn't out of the realm of possibility that either team could win. But I like the Cardinals.
Hey, Vegas has the Cardinals at 9.5 wins. That's being bet heavily to the over. People are pounding it. I don't know how they haven't moved that to 10.5 yet.
I don't understand how that works.
And Seattle's 10.5.
Yeah.
When's the last season Seattle won less than 10 games? I should have looked this up
2011.
Before. It's been,
2011.
And why would they drop off this year? Marshawn Lynch? Thomas Rawls, he looks okay?
Well, he looked very good. I thought he was a very strong running back and replacement for Lynch, but...
Everyone wants to debate in the NFL, right? That it's, we have a system offense, you plug in somebody else, it works. The thing is that's really how it goes with a lot of teams. There's very few players in the NFL that have that significant of an impact. Usually it's a quarterback. If you can't throw the ball, you can't score points, right? So I guess with Seattle, can somebody fit in there? A team like Dallas is a team where before Romo was out, I was thinking, hey, that offensive line made DeMarco Murray look... like he'll never have a bad run ever. Last season, Darren McFadden looked fantastic. This year, Ezekiel Elliott, definitely discussion for Rookie of the Year. We didn't touch on that earlier, so definitely had to say that. And Seattle, I have them winning the division. You have Arizona winning the division. Splitting hairs there, really.
But to go back, I mean, maybe one of the reasons why people have them, or why Vegas has them at 10.5, is because I don't know if there's much there for Wilson to lean on. He doesn't have a good tight end. I mean, they got rid of Zach Miller. The Bears got him. And, I mean, Jimmy Graham last year was such a disappointment when you consider what he was able to do in New Orleans.
Yeah, and he's been like
him and Gronk were like neck and neck for a while.
Absolutely.
But now it's clearly Gronk. And, I mean...
Yeah, Baldwin has to have a similar season to last year.
I like Tyler Lockett as well.
Yeah,
I think he's definitely he's got a lot of potential, and he has had a lot of great catches for Russell. But maybe
Wilson is a huge mobile quarterback. He needs to be healthy enough that he can continue to be mobile. Because if he can't leave the pocket, if he were to have any type of leg injury where he can't get out of the way and try and break for those first downs, Seattle just like that. That's a huge part of their game,
and that's why you see pocket quarterbacks being able to go have these ridiculously long careers, and then you got guys like RG3 and Colin Kaepernick where they base their games around that mobile offense.
And maybe that's why Vegas is low on the Panthers this year as well. So that's our division by division thoughts. And in the AFC Championship game, I have the New England Patriots defeating the Cincinnati Bengals, heading on to play the Green Bay Packers, who will defeat the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship, and the Packers taking the cake. You have a very similar standings as well. You just have New England beating Indianapolis, and then Green Bay beating Seattle, and Green Bay beating New England in the Super Bowl. So, hey, Tom Brady, take the first 4 weeks off. We still think you'll be in the Super Bowl. Will you win it? Sure, you'll have a chance. Green Bay, will you be in the Super Bowl if you can stay healthy? We definitely think so. That's all for our divisions and our predictions for conference championships and Super Bowl. on to week 1 DraftKings. I won't be giving out many picks over the podcast this week, but you can certainly catch me on Twitter. Haven't even dropped our Twitter handles yet. What are we doing? You can catch me on Twitter at FanalystDrew. Tyson, where can people catch you on Twitter?
At TFP_Tice.
And at any time, shoot us your questions for fantasy, whether it's, starts and sits for week 1 of fantasy, whether it's DraftKings, whatever you're thinking, run it by us. Talk to us on Twitter. Definitely love to engage with you and discuss anything sports. Even if it's not football, maybe you have a fantasy figure skating league. We don't know what we're talking about, but we'll gladly give you an opinion on who we think has the nicer dress and should get the judges' points. But week 1 DraftKings, see, the problem is that they set their pricing so far ahead of schedule so that they can get all these new players to start making teams and such, that you get your salaries for players way too early, and then you start to have injuries to people like Tony Romo. He gets injured. Now Dak Prescott is a minimum salary quarterback, and he's going to be on a whole bunch of rosters week 1. Chase Daniel now, he's going to be a minimum. I don't think he's going to quite get the same love as Dak Prescott because of his preseason. And there's so many other players, really, like to go position by position, looking at value players. We can honestly talk about 6 or 7 different guys. I dropped a guy, Terrell Pryor, earlier, who I think could be a little bit of a sleeper for a few deep passes from RG3 for the Browns. We both think that they could pull some surprises against Philadelphia in week 1.
Yep.
And in week 1, my advice mainly for fantasy football is don't go too heavy on DraftKings. Don't try and chase these huge tournaments. Sure, turning $3 into $1 million sounds great, but you're going to have to beat 2 million people to do that.
Yeah.
And if it's your first time playing fantasy football, don't even throw $3 in there. Don't waste it. It's worse than the lottery because you're going to have, probably like something crazy is going to happen week 1. Like, I'm trying to think of something here. Somebody who has an established starting quarterback is going to go down. Ben Roethlisberger is going to go down, and the backup is going to come in, throw 4 touchdowns to the number 7 receiver, and that's going to be the key player to have on your winning team. Yeah. And somebody is somehow going to play that guy due to God knows what. Somebody who doesn't even know what they're doing is going to win this tournament. So don't waste your time on those things.
I got caught up in that game last year way too much where I was going in these huge tournaments, and then you told me, listen, the way to win money is going in these small, 50-50 ones.
Absolutely. And if you can play those cash games, if you hear me ever talk about cash games, 50-50s, triple ups, head-to-head games. I'm playing a ton of head-to-head games on week 1 because that's me versus you, one-on-one. And if I think I have an edge against the majority of new football players, which I should if I've been following the league, even for a few weeks, you should have an edge on quite a few players. But you do have to do your research, know what you're doing with building these rosters. Lots of places online now giving out fantasy football advice, especially for DraftKings. And hey, head on over to TheFanalystPod on Twitter, and you'll see pinned at the top there, I have a link there where you can go and sign up for DraftKings. If you're a first-time player, head on over there and then shoot me a message if you need some help with getting your first roster together. Would love to help you out over Twitter or some other means that we can find to discuss. Love to help you out, get you registered. If you sign up, you can help support the podcast. We would both get $20 in DraftKings dollars for week 1. So definitely worth it. If you do not have a DraftKings account yet, head on over to our Twitter page at TheFanalystPod. We'll get you set up there and help you out. And like I said, just take it easy week 1, have some fun. Let's get to see what these teams are because, there's a lot like week 1. Who's going to be good? Probably Julio Jones, probably Odell Beckham Jr., probably DeAndre Hopkins. These are good players, but we got to see how these guys are doing. Some of them have new offenses. Right now, go with established players who are with teams that how they're going to be utilized. And like I said, just don't go too heavy. And, some tips, if you are going to play some tournaments, you want some positive correlation within your lineup. If you're going to win anything, then you want to have your quarterback with your wide receiver. Because if you think that, for instance, Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have a huge week 1 and catch 3 touchdowns, that means Eli Manning is getting 3 touchdown passes as well. So you want to make sure that you tie up those type of players. You want to have your wide receivers and your quarterbacks. I'm certainly going to have an RG3 combo with Terrell Pryor because if RG3 has a big week 1, I want to be on that money boat because not a lot of people will have him. And those are the type of moves you need to win tournaments. Look for some low value plays so you can afford some of the bigger guys. I like to go boom or bust in tournaments and pick some of the high priced players who are kind of being skipped by other guys. A running back who might be great for week 1 is, the running back there, Chris Johnson for David Johnson. Yeah. Jeez, I'm thinking of think a Tennessee Titan.
Yeah.
David Johnson, Arizona Cardinals. Week 1, he's against the Patriots. People don't like to take players against the Patriots because they just don't think you can do it. And there's a nice red number there because running backs don't do well against New England. There might be a lot of opportunities for Dave to get a lead with the Cardinals and run the ball down their throat for the rest of the game. I think he's an all right guy for week 1. And go boom or bust with your picks and target players in the high over-under games. Green Bay, Jacksonville. That's a game where where Blake Bortles can really keep up with Aaron Rodgers.
He's definitely a guy that you should consider having on your fantasy team.
Absolutely.
Every week. He has the stat ability to make great money.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who's played daily fantasy for a while, you've heard of some of the other sites as well other than DraftKings, a site that just got purchased by someone else called Fantasy Feud. They used to have multiple quarterback leagues where you would get more than one quarterback. And I won a tournament last year where I had the New York Giants and it was the New Orleans Saints. And that's when Breeze threw 7 touchdowns.
Right.
So I had Breeze and I had Manning and I had both of their number 1 receivers who both caught, I think, 3 touchdowns. I think I had Cooks and I had OBJ.
Wow.
I just built a game stack and it was in, I don't remember what league it was, and I won a couple $100 and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So definitely you want to try and pair up those types of players and so spend up on the elite running backs and wide receivers. Find some value plays because there's lots throughout this week. You can just watch me out on Twitter at FanalystDrew for the next week, and I'll tweet out some of the value plays as I come across in the next few days because there's still going to be some moves on rosters where there's going to be some guys that we'll see are going to get a lot of targets and touches, and those are the guys we want on our roster for sure. So Tyson, I know that you're you played some DraftKings last year. This year, you're going to try and have a bit more fun with football, play some more. So we will certainly be talking a lot more about fantasy football in the upcoming podcasts. This time, we just wanted to kind of get through the season to start, find our feet, get our feet wet and figure out what we're doing and where our brains are. And of course, talk to you guys. And the one last thing that I really want to get to before we say goodbye is survivor pool picks. A lot of people play in survivor pools. I'm in one this year as well. If you've never played in a survivor pool, the way it works is that every week you pick a team to win. Just win one of the games. So this week, the biggest favorite on the board is the Seattle Seahawks. They're at home, 10.5-point favorites to the Miami Dolphins. So let's say week 1 you pick Seattle and they win. You will move on to week 2 of your survivor pool. And then next week, you can pick, again, any team in the NFL besides the Seattle Seahawks. So once you use a team, you cannot use them again throughout the season. And when you're in these pools, depending on how many players you have, you just have to try and make it as far as you can into the survivor stretch. So usually it's over the 16 weeks of the season. And, hey, if you're in a league where you got 30 friends, $10, someone wins $300 at the end. So I know I'm kind of looking right now. I think the Seattle Seahawks are obviously the go-to team. I think everyone in my entire league is going to pick Seattle, though. And Seattle lost week 1 last year to the St. Louis Rams. So I'm kind of thinking maybe I want to save Seattle for another game throughout the season. One of the teams you can really rely on. We have them going 13-3. So odds are they're going to be winning a lot more games this season. So if I have to look at another team that I think can pull off the big win week 1, if Jamal Charles is healthy, I'm pretty comfortable with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're 7-point favorites at home against the San Diego Chargers. Just because, hey, if something bad happens to Seattle, right, and you're in a survivor league with 100 players, you might lose 80 or 90 of them that week. Anyone, Tyson, can you look at that list and tell me one team you think is going to win this week?
Well, I guess one would be Indianapolis beating Detroit. I like Indy, and I don't like Detroit this season.
Okay, I think that's a solid pick there.
And I think Andrew Luck will want to prove something early, and I think that'll be a big game for him.
Yeah, so do what you with our advice. Odds are that if you go completely against everything we say, you will have a great fantasy football season. If you listen to us, well, you'll just be along with us for the ride. Thanks for listening to the first episode here of TFP Blitz. It's our football podcast. We'll be back next week, and we'll be doing this all season long. Tyson will be with me, and, maybe we'll squeeze in a guest here and there. We'll see how things go. But once again, you can catch me on Twitter at FanalystDrew. Tyson?
At TFP_Tice.
And you can follow the podcast at TheFanalystPod. If you're listening on YouTube, please help us out. Give us a subscribe. Give us a like. Follow us on Twitter. Find us on Facebook.
tell us how bad we are. And
comment, tell us where we're wrong, let us know, and we can't wait to talk to you next week. Football, week 1 this week. I'm super pumped. I'm going to be glued to the couch from 1 until about 11 p.m. Do not bother me. The only interruptions I will allow is the pizza delivery guy showing up to the door to refuel for the primetime game. That is Arizona and New England. Going to be a great primetime game. And yeah, that just about does it for us. TFP Blitz, the Fanalist Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.